How's it going, guys? It's your boy Kanji FPL and welcome back to the channel. On today's video, we're going to be going through my game week 38 team review as well as an overall season review. I've done a lot of reflecting over the past couple of days and I've come up with at least 3 points that I want to improve on going into next season, and I cannot wait to share them with you guys. So without further ado, let's jump right into my game week 38 team analysis. Moving into game week 38, I was looking at my front 8 attackers and I was comfortable if any of them had gotten pitch time for me. So my front 8 attackers were Palmer, Saka, Foden, Son, who are very strong FPL picks, and then Madsen as my differential playing against Sheffield away. And then my front 3 was Jackson playing Bournemouth, Isak playing Brentford, and then Holland. So I was comfortable with any of them getting minutes, and that's why I knew when I was going to spend my transfer going into game week 38, I was supposed to use it on a defender. Now, why not just bring in the highest scoring FPL defender in the game in Ben White, especially playing at home on the final day, playing against a team that's not a good attack. And that's why I did Tarkowski to Ben White, especially given the fact that Man City had very strong clean sheet odds. And I just thought that if Man City were going to be up in the fixture early, maybe they'd be up 1 or 2-0 by halftime. Maybe they just played defensive in the second half and try to just keep possession. And that's why I decided to just keep Walker in my team. Then I had Pedro Porro playing against Sheffield away, one of the worst teams in the league, and he also has very strong attacking threat. So I knew there was a chance for a clean, however low it could be, and there was going to be a chance for an attacking return. And fortunately for me, he got both. So it was a good decision to bring in a defender, but unfortunately Ben White did not deliver. Clean sheet was wiped, but that's okay. That's the story of my season. When I own Arsenal defenders, they don't return, and when I go against them, they clean for multiple weeks in a row. So if you can't tell, I'm a little bit bitter about them, but that's okay. We'll jump into that when I get to my overall season review. I do have 2 regrets when I'm looking at my game week 38 squad. The first is that I cannot believe that I benched Alexander Isak for Nicholas Jackson. Regardless of how informed Jackson is, I just do believe that Isak is the better player, so I should have just have been starting Isak over Jackson. Fortunately for me, I did not get punished for that decision because Bukayo Saka missed that fixture entirely. I was able to get the Isak points off the bench. Because Bukayo Saka actually missed this fixture, it hampered the impact that Ben White would have. Because usually what happens is that defenders double up on Bukayo Saka and it gives Ben White the freedom to overlap and cross balls into the box. Because Saka was out of this fixture, Ben White didn't have as much attacking upside as I had anticipated going into the game week 38 final day fixture, but it is what it is. That's how the cookie crumbles. So my one regret is actually benching Alexander Isak, but my other regret is actually not moving the captaincy armband off of Erling Haaland. You know how it is, hindsight is 20/20, but I was just too scared of what Haaland could have done in this fixture, especially given the fact that he put up 2.5 XG in the reverse fixture away. So I was just thinking at home he'd probably put up at least 3 XG, right? Well, unfortunately he only put up 0.7 XG and he didn't score either. So it's one of those things where if I had gone for any of my differential captain options of Palmer, he got an assist, Foden, he got a brace, and Son, he got an assist. If I had gone to any of them, I actually would have done better. The only reason that I'm annoyed is that I lost my mini league. I was chasing an 11-point gap going into the final day. I looked at my mini league rivals team and I did just look at my differentials, and I thought in my mind I'd be able to make up the 11 points because of the differentials that I owned in my squad, and I didn't need to go against the captaincy. Unfortunately, I did make up the gap, but I made up 9 points, mainly coming from Pedro Porro versus Romero. And apart from that, I didn't get enough differential points to give me the first place in my mini league. And because of this, I should have listened to the advice that I was hearing from some of the people on my Twitter spaces and to go against Haaland from captaincy, but I bottled it. That's the one thing that I'm very disappointed in of my entire season, just stemming back to one captaincy decision on the final day. I could have won my mini league, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. So I got to be able to live with my results. So benching Isak, I got away with it because Saka missed the fixture, but not captaining Haaland, that would have been the best way to end the season, especially given the amount of differential EV and risk that I've already taken. I already had lost my goal of the top 100K. I should have gone with a differential captain on the final day, but I didn't. And you know, low risk, low reward. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to make up the 11-point gap, and I have to live with the results. So I've officially lost my mini league, and I wasn't able to reach my goals in the top 100K. So it was a very disappointing season for me overall, especially given the fact that I have very strong finishes over the past couple seasons, finishing in the top 60K, 80K, and 120K respectively. This was a down year, but it's okay. I have to reflect on the season and try to find ways to improve. I've provided you guys with two charts. The chart on the top is from FPL Review, and the chart on the bottom is from FPL Optimized. Now, when I'm looking at the FPL Optimized chart, I do want to explain something to you. The larger the gap between the yellow line and the white line, the better it is for me. That means that I'm doing better in terms of getting higher predicted points relative to the elite managers. Now, I also want to emphasize that the yellow line is not a specific game week prediction. It's your prediction over the course of the season up until that point. For example, up until game week 21, that means that I was 15 expected points higher than the average elite manager. And I think that speaks volumes if you ask me. And I think there's two key moments in my season. The first was going to be when I used my first wildcard, which was in game week 8, where I decided to go against Haaland and bring in stronger overall options, having a strike force of Watkins plus Alvarez at the time when Alvarez was nailed, and have a very strong differential back three of Trent, Trippier, and Ben White. So I had very strong options at the time, and I really liked the amount of risk that I was going for, going against the template of having Haaland and Salah. I was going against Haaland at that time. And I think I was comfortable with it. I can live with it. The only thing that I want to point out is that if you notice my expected points from game week 8 till game week 16, which is when I sold Haaland, it didn't improve as much as what I thought it would have been. However, it did improve in general. So I think that's the first thing I want to mention, is that maybe the risk of selling Haaland isn't worth the reward just because of how dominant Haaland is, especially when a lot of people are captaining him. However, I want to emphasize that once Haaland got injured, you can see that my predicted points versus the average increases a lot. For example, from game week 16 to game week 23, I'm already in the template of where you would want to be if Haaland is going to be out for multiple weeks. And because of that, my average points relative to the field was actually much higher. And my growth from game week 16 to game week 23 of me being above the average increases. That put me in a very strong position going into game week 21, going into game week 22. And now Haaland was on the horizon. Instead of wildcarding to get Haaland back into my team, what I should have done is just taken a -4 or a -8 to have been suboptimal for a week or two in order to just save my wildcard for later on in the season. Because what I did with this wildcard is that I sold Ollie Watkins early when he had 4 or 5 very good fixtures where he got double digits in and he was 100% EO at the time. Secondly, I decided to sell my Arsenal defender and bring in Estupiñán, who wasn't even 100% nailed. When I was selling my Arsenal defenders, a lot of elite managers were bringing in double Arsenal defense, and that absolutely destroyed me. And you can see that from the downfall of my expected points from my wildcard in game week 22 all the way until the end of the season, really. Because I think Arsenal defenders were just so elite that you could have just doubled up on them and then just spent your transfers on your attack. And I just think that's something to really think about going forward. And instead of rectifying my mistake of getting rid of my Arsenal defender, I decided to just cover it up by bringing in a suboptimal player like David Raya to cover up the effective ownership. And I think one lesson I need to also think about from a mentality perspective is if I decide to go against a template, I have to swallow my pride and crush my ego that if I make a mistake and I see that something is very strong, I have to basically go back to the template, even if that means that I'm 10 points behind the field. That's just something that I really need to learn, is that if I want to take on the risk and I take on the risk and it doesn't work out, then I have to be able to swallow my pride and still go back to the template option, because I know that it was the best option longer term. And I just think that's something from a mindset perspective that I need to be more prepared for if I continue to have this idea of trying to beat the template. The next thing I want to emphasize is that by wildcarding early, I was actually wildcarding into uncertainty. We weren't sure when the double game weeks for Bournemouth were going to fall. What ended up happening is that Bournemouth had 2 double game weeks in quick succession, but I wildcarded so early, I didn't even have that information available at the time. I was just using predictions from Planet FPL as well as my own assumptions in terms of the perfect wildcard options that I would have made. I ended up taking hits for a Doughty or a Kaminsky, but if I had just been more patient with my wildcard, I could have saved some hits. And that's why I think when I'm looking at my overall season, I think one of the biggest things I could do to improve is just use my wildcard later. And if that means that I have a more template chip strategy, then so be it. Because I think it's important to understand that chip strategies are template for a reason, but that doesn't mean you have to go with the template options. You just have to understand what the template is. And once you wildcard later, you have the certainty of when the fixtures are falling, rather than if you're wildcarding early, you're sort of just making assumptions. And I just think there's much more risk in wildcarding early than there is wildcarding later, especially given how powerful the wildcard chip is. That is probably my number one way to improve, is just to save my wildcard for later. Moving on to the chart at the top from FPL Review. So if we look at the EV based on expected minutes within the model, I was around 80K. So I was good in terms of predicting minutes, and that's why my EV based on minutes is stronger than my expected minutes. Now, I just think I need to focus on players that have stronger XG in general. That would put me in a better position. So in general, I think I need to focus on players that have stronger XG rather than have players that are just 100% nailed that play the most minutes. Moving on to this portion of the video, we're going to be talking about captaincy. So my captaincy points put me in the bottom 4% of elite managers, and I just think that tells you all you need to know. The way that I'm completing my captaincy and selecting my captains is not a very smart process, and I think I've noticed that over the course of the season because I'm so interested in fixture exposure, and I think that doesn't matter as much as picking the best option. Let me give you an example. If I own Luis Diaz and Mo Salah and they're playing against Bournemouth at home, and then I have Saka playing against Everton at home, I'd be more likely to captain Saka just because I feel like I already have enough exposure from a Liverpool fixture, rather than selecting Mo Salah because he probably has the better fixture and is the best option in terms of captaincy that week in general. So that's the first thing that I really need to do, is just rethink the way that I do my captaincy selection in general. If I had the template captaincy picks, I'd be around 540 points, and that would put me within the top 100K. So I just think fixing my captaincy in isolation could be one of the best ways for me to improve my FPL rank going into next season. Next, I think I've taken way too many hits. If you notice, I'm always using my one free transfer. 95% of the time I've used my free transfer. I only rolled my transfer twice. So I need to be much more patient going into next season. And you can see that because I've taken 16 hits over the course of this entire season. That's almost like 60 points. So I've basically given 60 points back to the field and say, hey, you can have these 60 points and I'll still beat you. And I think that doesn't really make sense. So moving into next season, I want to improve my captaincy selection process to put me at least in the top 50% of elite FPL managers, and I want to be much more patient with my transfers, and I want to take around 10 hits maximum. As examples, I did take a hit for Thomas Kaminski as well as Alfie Doughty, and if I just wildcard later on in the season, I could have just saved those 2 hits in general. So that's just 2 examples of ways that if I just use my wildcard later, then I'd be able to take less hits. So I just think in general, these are the 3 goals that I need to focus on in order to improve and become a better FPL manager going into next season. You know, over the course of the season, there's always so many what ifs. Like, what if I had started with Mo Salah instead of going for Marcus Rashford or Bruno Fernandes? What if I had kept Saliba over the course of the entire season because I started with him? What if I didn't sell Watkins and Arsenal defense on my wild card? What if I went for Gvardiol instead of Walker? There's so many what ifs, so many would have, could have, should haves, but they really don't matter. What matters is what did happen. And so you have to understand what happened and try to find ways to improve. And I think I've tried to be as critical as possible. If there are any other ways that you guys have noticed, maybe you've been following my journey over the course of the season and you know a way that you think I can improve, feel free to just message that in the comment section down below or shoot me a message on Twitter. We can just have a discussion over there. In general, I just want to say, even though that I have failed my goal, I've missed my overall rank goal of the top 100K, I've lost my mini league, I just want to tell you guys that this journey has been incredible. Like, just meeting all these people along the way, interacting with so many people on Twitter, on YouTube, it's kind of made the process amazing and beautiful, even though it's been a struggle almost the entire time trying to reach my goals. So the goals matter less and I care more about the process. And I'm just really happy to be playing the game of FPL and to have interacted with so many different wonderful people along the way. So thank you so much for all your support, and I'm wishing you guys lots of green arrows, and I can't wait to see you guys soon. Take care. Peace.